And hey, there we are. Hello everyone. Spokane Steve here on a Monday with the 1982 replay stats update. Finished up 8 weeks this morning. So through week 8, we're going to take a look at the standings and the stats and the numbers of the 1982 Windows game full season replay. That is through May 30th on the calendar, so a little bit ahead of the 66 pace, which stands to reason as the computer games, of course, much faster to play. Now again, for those of you who don't know, in the 82 replay, I manage the home team in every game and let Hal manage the visitor team. That way it's fair for everybody. Everyone has 81 games managed by me and 81 games managed by Hal. The pseudo-affectionate term for the AI of the Windows game, of course. What else has been going on? As you guys know, the only time I appear on screen is for the stats update. Checking in. Beautiful day in Spokane. Temperatures in the low 80s today as a high, just absolutely perfect. I've been watching the MLB network here behind me. Let's see if we can locate Mookie. Sure, there he is. Say hi, Mookie. Oh, what a cat. We were out early today for our morning walk with a harness and leash. Today in 1966 at 1:30 Pacific time. What is our game today? That's right, it's Astros at Phillies. Mike Cuellar and Larry Jackson. I tell you what, I'm tired today. You can probably tell. Dragging a little, but we're going to get into this. Let me get the camera moved over and set up, and we'll take a look at the 82 season replay. So bear with me here. Bring that in a little tighter. And let's see what we got here. Let's expand this and make sure we can see everything. (1982) National League. Bear with me, I'm trying to make sure we're see, they don't go over that far. So we could actually move this over. You know, it's so long between updates, I forget this. And if we were to do that, I could make it even a little bit bigger for you guys. There we go. Looks like I've got one in the chat. Rhodes Scholar is here. Hey, I haven't seen you in a while, Rhodes Scholar. How's it going? All right, that's a pretty good view, I think. Okay, let's take a look at it. Looking at the National League. Division leaders, Cardinals and Dodgers with identical 30 and 18 marks. But one thing that struck me about the standings is the strength is in the East. 4 of the 6 Eastern teams over 500, just 2 in the West. We've got a dogfight here between the Dodgers and the Braves. The Braves trail the Dodgers by just 1 game, and they're even in the loss column. Okay? Giants have already fallen 8.5 back, Padres in 9.5, Reds 10, Astros 13 in the East. Cardinals have a 4-game lead on the Expos, 4.5 on the Phillies. Pirates 5 back, Mets 7.5, and the Cubs are 9 back. One thing that's fun to do, this Strat-O-Matic provides you with the actual record on this date, and then the total record for the season in real life that year. So you can see the Cardinals have exactly matched their record through 48 games so far. Dodgers overachieving, 500 at this point in real life, 30 and 18. The Braves are very close, 27-28. And they finished pretty close. Giants underachieving a bit. On the other hand, they're actually a game ahead of their pace at this point in the season in real life. Finished at 537, currently at 449. We can do the same thing, jump over to the American League here. Hang on a second. You know, it's as bright as it gets. Checking the brightness, because sometimes Mookie steps on the... Cats love to lay on laptops. That is a fact. And he's no exception. He'll tend to turn the brightness down with his paws. Okay, the American League, even more dramatic East-West. Look at that, would you? 6 of the 7 teams are over 500 in the East, just 2 in the West. Red Sox currently with the best record in the league, the best record in baseball at 30 and 16, a .652 percentage. They got off to a hot start in real life as well, wound up at 549. Brewers just 2.5 back. Of course, they were the division winners in real life. Jays and Orioles 5 back, Indians 5.5, Yankees 6 back, Tigers 8.5 back, the only team in the East under 500. Wow. In the West, the Royals lead the White Sox by a game. Real life division winner Angels 3.5 back, Mariners 5.5, Twins 6.5, A's 7, Texas, the worst record in baseball, 13 and 29, pretty much out of it. Not mathematically, of course, but what can you say? 13 and 29. I don't remember the Rangers much from 82, honestly. So let's go to the American League leaders now. Statistical leaders. Actually, what I wanted to do first, hang on, let's back that up a second. Before we get into that, let's take a look at the team stats. American League first. You can see the Red Sox. I won't spend a lot of time on these. Once again, you can always pause this and spend as much time on it as you like. But Boston hitting .292 as a team. Leading in runs scored with .245. Of course, as you know, batting average does not always directly correlate to runs scored. The Angels are second in runs scored, tied for 5th in team batting average. Or as Bill James once wrote, anyone should know intuitively that the object of a team is to score runs, not compile a high team batting average. I always thought that was a funny comment by Mr. James. In pitching, the Yankees way out in front with a 3.23 ERA. Boston, Baltimore, Kansas City, Milwaukee, Toronto, Detroit, Cleveland, all above the league average, which is 4.01. Angels' problem is clearly pitching. Wondering why they've underachieved their record so far. 4.29 team earned run average. We can do the same thing for the National. We have the Cubs at the top in batting. Also at the top in runs scored. Second in runs scored would be the Cardinals. Despite a lower average, they're only 2 runs scored behind the Cubs. Who's the big home run team in the league? Wow, it's the Dodgers with 38 home runs. The Giants 35, the Phillies 35. Let's check. Oh, I take that back. No, that isn't true. The Braves have 40. Braves leading with 40 home runs. Let's go back to the American League and look at that again. I didn't check home runs for them. 82 AL. For 50, there's a 58. The Angels leading with 58 home runs. The Mariners 53, the Brewers 50. That was Harvey's Wallbangers, you might remember. Pitching. Dodgers, not all that surprising, leading in pitching to 3.02. Expos 3.07. The Padres, despite their mediocre record, nice pitching staff, 3.20. So the Padres' problem is purely runs scored. 143. Well, sure enough, they're dead last in scoring. And by a decent margin. Houston next at 155, then it jumps way up to 184 with the Giants. So the Padres and the Astros definitely offensively challenged, at least so far in 1982. Braves had a good staff as well, 3.45. Phillies and Cardinals also above the league average. League average 3.74, a little better than the American League. But of course, remember in 1982, the American League had a designated hitter. The National League did not. So we're going to go back to the American League now, and we're going to go back to the league leaders. Kirk Gibson, surprisingly, tops the batting average category at 370. And you've got Greg Luzinski, Cecil Cooper, Bobby Grich, and Steve Kemp of the White Sox round out the top 5. How deep does this go? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. So Stapleton and LaFleur tied for 11th, still well above 300 at 318. What a different game it was, even 82 compared to today's ball game. And a far cry from the 60s as well. Runs scored, it's Toby Harrah leading by a nose over Ricky Henderson, Dwight Evans, Fred Lynn, and Rich Dower round out the top 5. In hits, it's Cecil Cooper, Damaso Garcia, Greg Luzinski, Rich Dower, and Kirk Gibson tied for the 4th spot. Luzinski leading in doubles with 18. Grich has 15. Damaso Garcia 14. Cooper, Yount, Lynn, and White, and Gibson, all with 13 doubles. Hal McRae paces the pack with 7 triples. Jerry Mumphrey, Cal Ripken, Jack Perconte, and Larry Herndon all have 4. Let's move down to the money stats. Home runs and RBIs. Pretty much everybody's favorite, along with batting average, I guess. Reggie Jackson and Jim Rice with 14 apiece top the American League in home runs. Kent Urbeck, Toby Harrah in 4th, and Cecil Cooper, Fred Lynn, and Lance Parrish, all tied with 11. DeCinces, Upshaw, and Cowens have 10. Cecil Cooper of the Brew Crew leads in RBIs with 45, Jim Rice 39, Urbeck, Thornton 34. Kemp and Cowens round out the top 5 with 33 apiece. Ricky Henderson, look at that, 53 walks. The next most is Andre Thornton's 36. In intentional walks, Bruce Bhakti of the Mariners leading with 7. Dave Stapleton and Gary Ward have 5. You probably notice a few more intentional walks in this replay as compared to my 66, as Hal tends to walk people intentionally, especially, well, I was going to say especially in the clutch, but I'm not even sure they have clutch in 82. That didn't come along until the 85 cards. So probably not. I'll have to look into that. Chet Lemon leads in hit by pitches with 7. Hoffman and Hara 6 apiece. Stolen bases, Ricky Henderson, not surprisingly, way out in front with 49. Well on his way to cracking the 100 mark. Damaso Garcia with 33, and then a big drop-off to Julio Cruz, John Wathan, and Ron LaFleur. Longest hitting streak so far is Bobby Gritch's 21-game streak. The asterisk, of course, indicates current streak, so we find Cecil Cooper with an active 12-game hitting streak. Gary Renicky leads the league in slugging. Baltimore's Gary Renicky at 618, Cecil Cooper 595, Fred Lynn 582, Kent Urbeck 578. Greg Luzinski at 571 rounds out the top 5. And on base, it's Renicky again. 432 on base. Luzinski 425, Dwight Evans 423, Andre Thornton 417, and Bobby Gritch and Carl Yastrzemski 411 round out the top 5. And of course, with Renicky leading in slugging and on base, obviously he's going to lead in OPS 1,050. Luzinski, Kurt Gibson, Cooper, and Hara round out the top 5. There's your total base leaders. I'm not as interested in runs created per 27 outs or the lefty-righty numbers. So we can move down to the pitching stats now. Luis Leal still leading in wins with 8, Mike Caldwell with 7, and a half a dozen pitchers have 6. McGregor, Eckersley, Steeb, Britt Burns, Len Barker, and Morris. Roundy Lurch, Jim Clancy, and Huff, all 7-game losers so far. Leal leading in winning percentage. In ERA, it's Eckersley with a microscopic 1.49. Bob McClure of Milwaukee in second, 1.99. Luis Leal, Dennis Leonard, and Pete Vukovich rounding out the top 5. There's Rudy May, Dennis Martinez, Len Barker, Dave Righetti, Jim Palmer, and Britt Burns. Martinez leads in innings pitched. 4 pitchers have started 12 games. Dave Steeb has 8 complete games to lead the league. Leal with 7. 3 pitchers have 6. In saves, it's Goose Gossage out in front with 12. Wally Fingers and Bill Cottle of the Mariners 10 apiece. And we'll go down to strikeouts. Len Barker of Cleveland leading at 59. Ron Guidry and Dave Righetti, 2 Yankee left-handers, with 57. Brad Havens and Floyd Bannister with 55. That's interesting in itself, is it not? 4 of the top 5 in strikeouts are left-handed. They do have the voting, Greg, and welcome to the chat. We can look at that. Let's see, what would that be under? Here we go, awards voting. That's what Hal says so far. The season ended today. Cecil Cooper would be the MVP. Jim Rice, close runner-up. Hara, Evans, and Mollett are all receiving votes, and Luis Leal would be your Cy Young Award winner, followed by 2 relievers, Gossage and Cottle. Let's jump over to the National League, where we find Philly catcher Bo Diaz leading the league in batting at 371. I think it's safe to say that he won't be there when the season's over. So just a reminder again of small sample size. Leon Durham at 359, Mike Schmidt of 347, Bill Buckner 344, Chris Chambliss and Gary Matthews round out the top 5 at 333. There's Joe Morgan, Bill Madlock, Lonnie Smith, a favorite of mine when he was playing. I guess because I always thought he was an underrated player. Shocking to see Bill Russell in there at 322. That's also not going to hold up. Concepcion and Ray Knight round out the top dozen there. In runs scored, it's Ryan Sandberg of the Cubs with 36, closely followed by Gary Matthews of the Phillies with 35. Steve Sachs, Lonnie Smith, and Al Oliver all with 31 round out the top 5 in that category. Bill Buckner leads in hits. Diaz, Concepcion, Knight, and then there's 3 players with 60 hits. In doubles, it's Steve Garvey and Ray Knight with 16 doubles. Chris Chambliss and Dale Barra with 15 apiece. And 3 players with 14. Evans, Smith, Stearns. That's Darrell Evans, third baseman for the Giants. 3 players with 4 triples. And now down once again to the money stats. Bob Horner of the Braves leads in home runs at 13. Mike Schmidt has a dozen. Pedro Guerrero, 11. Bo Diaz, George Hendrick, and Leon Bull Durham, all with 8, round out the top 5. You can see Murphy, Madlock, Baker, Morgan, Jack Clark, and Buckner all with 7. In RBIs, it's Bo Diaz again with 40. What a start to the season the Philly catcher has had. Bob Horner, 36 ribbies. Durham, Buckner, and Guerrero round out the top 5. Lonnie Smith leading in walks. The Cardinal leadoff man, he was an on-base machine, particularly in 82. 13 of those walks have been intentional. That's interesting. I would have to say that's almost all Hal-driven. I cannot remember myself walking him once intentionally when I was managing the other team. Boy, Horner was a power man. He was a power hitter. His career was shortened, wasn't it, Greg? I mean, he didn't have the longevity, the career numbers that I would think that he should have had. Perhaps injuries played a role in that. I don't remember. Chili Davis, 47 strikeouts. There's Lonnie Smith again, hit by the pitch with 5. Anything to get on, Lonnie. Parker Rose, Bump Wills. Hubie Brooks and Joel Youngblood with 4. Sacrifice hits, of course, mostly pitchers in the National League, but it's Glenn Hubbard tied with Mario Soto. Hubbard, the Atlanta second baseman. In steals, Mookie Wilson holds a narrow lead over Omar Moreno and Bump Wills. Lonnie Smith with 21. Tim Raines at 19 rounds out the top 5. And in stolen base percentage, take a look at that. There's my good friend, Keith Hernandez. We'll be back at 1:30 with the autographed ball, right? Hitting streak, Diaz, the longest in the league so far at 15, but you can see both Andre Dawson and Al Oliver have current 14-game hitting streaks, so Diaz is 15 in jeopardy right now. Slugging and on base, Mike Schmidt with a very impressive .703 slugging percentage. Way in front of the pack. Bull Durham at .587, Diaz .576, Pedro Guerrero and Joe Morgan round out the top 5. Horner narrowly missing at .545. Schmidt also leading it on base at .473. There's Lonnie Smith, .455. Durham, Morgan, and Jason Thompson, the Pirate first baseman, round out the top 5. Bo Diaz just missing at .422. I'm going to have to look at Diaz's card now because Yeah, no, that was Roger McDowell, Greg. Come on, man. From behind the bushes. On the grassy hill. Look at Schmidt's frickin' OPS, 1176. Way outdistancing Durham's second place, 1,039. Diaz, Morgan, and Guerrero again round out the top five. Total bases, Pedro Guerrero leading with 105, Bill Buckner 102. Diaz, Durham, and Horner rounding out the top five. Jumping down to pitching. In wins, it's Fernando Valenzuela with 8, and then we have 5 pitchers with 7. Rick Rhoden, Steve Carlton, Tim Lawler. Remember Tim Lawler? San Diego. Joaquin Andujar. Who could ever forget Joaquin? He was an interesting personality. Let's just say that. Scott Sanderson also with 7. There's Mario Soto and Randy Jones of the Mets. It's funny because I always identify Randy Jones with the Padres. It's funny how that works, isn't it? In losses, Seaver, Juan Eichelberger, Joe Niekro, and Fergie Jenkins all have 7 losses. Down to earned run average, Scott Sanderson leading at 1.88 narrowly over the Giants' Bill Lasky. There's another one. There was a name I didn't remember until I started doing this replay, and I said, yes, I remember Lasky. 1.89. Fernando, 2.13. Charlie Lee of the Expos, 2.2. There's Joaquin Andujar again, 2.35. There's Ruthven, Martin, Gullickson, Lawler, Walk, Montefusco, the Count, and Bob Forsch. Valenzuela leading in innings. That seems realistic. He was a workhorse. So was Carlton. Complete games, it's Carlton with 6. Speaking of Carlton. Tim Lawler's thrown 5 for the Padres. And 5 pitchers have 4 complete games. Soto, Royce, Valenzuela, Sutton, and Jenkins. In saves, Steve Howe and Bruce Sutter tied with 12. Gene Garber in 3rd, and then we have no less than 5 pitchers tied with 6. Rod Scurry of the Pirates, Minton, Lee Smith, Neil Allen of the Mets, and Jesse Orosco of the Mets. Saves by committee in New York, Allen the righty, Orosco the lefty. Seven pitchers have thrown 2 shutouts. In strikeouts, Carlton way in front with 96, Mario Soto 82, Nolan Ryan 72, Valenzuela 71, Bob Welch 62 rounds out the top 5. Let's check that awards voting here for the NL. If the season ended today, Pedro Guerrero would be the MVP. Bo Diaz a close second. Durham, Horner, and Buckner rounding out the top 5. Valenzuela would have the Cy Young Award. Scott Sanderson, Tim Lawler, Steve Howe, and Greg Minton, 2 relievers, round out the top 5. The All-Star selections by position. Now, we've talked about this on my broadcast for 66. We'll probably do it by committee in 1966, picking the All-Star team. And but for the 82 season, I'm just going to go with the HAL selections since I'm doing that project solo. In other words, I'm not streaming the games. So that would be your all-star team there. And the top pitchers. And there's 12 of them. I guess actually all those pitchers would make the team, right? Valenzuela would get the start. I always like to see how many relievers are in the list. There's Minton, Howe, Reed, and Garber. So 4 of the 12 are relievers. Let's go back to the American League and look at that. There's Cottle, Gossage, Stanley, Fingers, This is Sanchez. I think Sanchez has done both. Oh, I know what I was going to do. I was going to look at Bo Diaz's card. Hit 288 in real life. He's hitting 371. OPS in the replay, that's in blue. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's 999. Real life was 783. And we can't open up the card even and look at the card. There's his card. Significantly better against lefties. And you can even go to this bar graph. Actually, not that significantly. More on base against lefties, more power against righties. Isn't that handy? Have you guys ever seen that before? Certainly quicker than counting up the numbers, although most veteran strat players can pretty much just glance at a card and tell you whether it's good or not. But yeah, this really helps here. You can see their on-base and slugging percentages at a glance, and home run percentages. So a good card for Bo Diaz, certainly not a 371, 576 slugging card. Let's look at Felton. Where the hell is he? What team was he on? Another thing we can do is the search option. Minnesota, Felton. This is certainly worth looking at. Good grief. Boy, has he ever overachieved. He's only started 4 games, and he's pitched, I thought he pitched in relief as well. 4 games started and 3 saves. 4 and 4 with 3 saves. These don't really sound like all-star worthy numbers, do they? Let's look at his card. Well, he doesn't give up a lot of hits. The on base is fairly high, especially against lefties. The green represents walks on the bar chart. The red, of course, represents home runs. He certainly has a long ball problem against righties, and he walks a lot of people. So again, I'm going to go back and attribute that to my old standby on that one. Small sample size, 54 innings. Yeah, those numbers are not going to hold. Right? Not going to happen. Sorry, Terry. Well, that's the 1982 stats update. He never won a major league game. Son of a bitch. Well, thank you, Greg, for pointing that out. That's interesting. I know nothing about him myself. Spot starter believer for the Twins. Worked 117 innings that year. Only started 6 games. He's already started 4 of those right there. So he'll only start 2 more games. The rest of the time he'll be in the bullpen. That should also mean his usage percentage will drop. At 150%, he's been overused so far. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that. I do to a point. Anyway, it's about time for lunch for me, so that's it for the 1982 stats update. Thanks for checking it out. And in about 2 hours, I'll be back with the 1966 game. So thanks for joining me, guys. Take care, and I'll see you later on.